Hey guys, post-edit Raven here. Just realized how long this video is going to be, so before we get into everything, we're just going to go over a quick overview of the different topics that are going to be covered in this video. And so I'll put timestamps down below if you want to skip to anything specific. First things first, it's a general introduction to the project, talking about what the Age of Reclamation is. And then we're going over the Pillar of Autumn mod very briefly and how that's all going to work out. Then we're going to move into the framework and standalone versions of the mod, and I'll get into what all that means. After that, it'll be how ships will function and the new ships that we're going to be introducing. After that, it's going to be armor differentiation, the different faction replacements, new systems and names for those systems and planets. New space stations and the new space station system, new outpost system, the unique starts and new character creation system, the new perk system and how it affects you and the world around you, timeline for releases, how things are going to be divvied out and what that's going to look like. And then finally, it's going to be what the story is really going to be about, the timeline of different things. And then we're going to wrap it up with miscellaneous concepts that I'm looking into and testing out, things that will end up being mods or in mods. But for right now, we're just kind of like vague notions of an idea for things that will be pushing the limits of the engine for Starfield. And at the very end will be questions submitted by members of the Age of Reclamation Discord. And so the next time I put out a video, I'll probably do something similar in case I miss anything. And if you would like to be included in that or ask questions in general, please feel free to go over and look at the Discord, check it out. There's lots of community engagement there, other information. I share lots of updates about the project there. You can also find links to my streams. I do regular updates on these streams, and there's also lots of fun gaming stuff. So pop on by, hope to see you there, and please enjoy the video.
One. Are you sure?
Yes. They called it the Pillar of Autumn.
Why was it not destroyed with the rest of their fleet?
It fled as we set fire to their planet, but I followed with all the ships at my command.
Hello everybody, it's Vorador's Raven, and welcome to the Age of Reclamation. On screen you can see the Pillar of Autumn, the iconic ship from the Halo franchise, one of them anyway, from the first Halo game, Halo Combat Evolved. It is the first mod that I've created and uploaded to Nexus, currently in a bit of a beta work-in-progress state. But it is there and working. I'll get more to that in a minute. But firstly, what is the Age of Reclamation? Well, the Age of Reclamation is a Halo-themed overhaul and total conversion project for Starfield. It will encompass many different kinds of mods and aspects about gameplay, and the overall goal is to replace much of the existing vanilla framework in Starfield with Halo enemies, weapons, factions, armor, ships, planets, and lore. Essentially, the goal is to convert all of Starfield into a Halo game, more or less. This project will likely take several years. There's a lot of writing involved, quest creation. The reason being for that is the story content for this mod. And so the story portion of this project will begin just before First Contact event happens in the year 2525. And will take place during the entire course of the war. This will be achieved by containing series of time periods and cutting off the mod and the story in specific parts and sections and places, and sort of bridging time periods together. So one period will take place in, let's say, 5 years, and then maybe 7 or 8 years, 10 years, and then there will be jump cuts to the next time period. And within that time period of, let's say, the first 5 years of the war, you will have the opportunity to encounter different events in successive order that they happened. So something happened on, let's say, February 1st, and you can't encounter the thing that happened on February 5th before you encounter what happened on February 3rd. So you'll have to do them in the timeline order of events that these things happen. One option, which I assume will be fairly popular enough, is that you can play things exactly as they happen in the Halo canon timeline. There's no deviations, there's no RPG element that will affect the story. There will still be those aspects, and you can still enjoy a lot of the fun parts of the game if you just want to experience the series of events as they happened in Halo canon. However, the other, more broader scope and larger portion of the story content for this mod will be a full RPG style story where your choices matter. Your decisions will affect the outcome of the war and of the human race and the Covenant and really the galaxy as a whole. There are lots of story things that I could get into, but I will probably save that for another video. Just getting you the overall gist of that portion of things. That's the general gist of what the Age of Reclamation is. You've got the total overhaul and conversion aspect of it, which will breed out smaller mods, which will be intended to be combined together on top of what I'm calling the framework, but will also be usable outside of the project as a whole, or at least outside of the story portion of the project. So if you would just like a ship or an armor or weapons or anything like that, enemy type, faction, something, you can say, well, I only want this thing, I don't want the rest of it, I don't want the story portion, I just want this mod. The goal is for you to be able to go and download just that mod or series of mods or whatever. Plug and play is going to be designed from the start on top of the more fulfilling purpose of those mods, which is to be connected together on top of the framework. The framework mod, which will change key aspects of the vanilla game in ways that will likely make it unplayable for most any other mod or most any other gameplay, like playthrough, if you aren't intending to play with the rest of the series of the Age of Reclamation mods, because it's going to be removing almost every vanilla aspect of the game, including characters, quests, items, locations, POIs, most of that stuff. Some of it will be transferred over, like if I feel like I can fit it into the Halo world pretty well enough, then I'll do that. But a lot of things will be removed and replaced with all the rest of the different mods that this project is going to be about. That's the overall goals of the project. And with that out of the way, we will move on to talking about the Pillar of Autumn. I'm calling it a demo mod. It's just the ship right now, and it's got a couple bugs, some things I'm still trying to iron out. But as we test the waters with it, we're using the Pillar of Autumn mod as a kind of groundwork for other mods that will be in the rest of the project. New ships and size limitations for those ships, and how the sizes of those ships will affect gameplay. The Pillar of Autumn is currently sitting at 1.3 kilometers, making her, as far as I'm aware, the largest ship in the game currently, and I'm not aware of any other mods that make a ship that big. Likely because it causes its hefty own amount of problems. She does not play nice when things get a little too close to her because of the way the geometry is worked out and the way the collision is set up for the model. It kind of jumps around a little bit when things brush up against it or they jump around. It does not fly well in asteroid fields where they're very small and clustered together. As you can see from the video footage, if they're big and open, spread apart decently, she flies fairly well. I have also been told that debris fields are another big problem. Any sort of space point of interest in which there's a lot of small, tiny objects all clustered together, or large battlefields where you're being swarmed by smaller enemies and they just want to get right up on you, that can cause some problems. We'll work some of that stuff out as much as we can, but in terms of the POIs and things like that, and when you jump into certain locations, and your jump-in location is right in the middle of a debris field or something like that, it'll cause some issues. So when we move on to making our own POIs, and I've sort of built them around the scale of things in Halo, then it will become less of an issue about how large some of these ships are. And I can tell you right now, without getting too much into it, they will be quite large, some of these ships. Pillar of Autumn mod will feature the ship with a fully custom interior. It will be based on the original interior from the Pillar of Autumn in the first Halo game, in the first and final missions, but I have made several alterations, because if any Halo players or Halo fans are aware of, the inside of the ship infamously does not fit the outside of the ship. And there's a lot of issues with that, so I can't just use the base raw interior for the Pillar of Autumn with the exterior, because it would be clipping, and also there's a lot of filler in the Pillar of Autumn interior. A lot of sections that just don't need to exist. There's just useless, unnecessary hallways, and so I'll be thinning a lot of those out and just keeping some core parts that will help fill out the length and just give you the essentials that you're looking for. Some of them will have functions similar to certain habs, but because it'll all be one custom interior cell that's inside of the ship, they won't have the same exact functions as some other habs. They won't behave like habs in the same exact ways. It'll be slightly different, but overall the goal is a very immersive and engaging experience. If you would like to see some of what that is going to look like, I have live recordings that I do for the project every Wednesday. They're all up on my YouTube channel. So that's the ship portion. It will also feature 2 UNSC weapons, the MA5 assault rifle from Halo Combat Evolved and Halo Wars, the original big 60-round one. It will also feature the Magnum pistol, the plasma rifle, and the plasma pistol. I'm probably also going to include the UNSC Halo frag grenade and the Covenant plasma grenade. It will also feature a new armor set, the UNSC Marine armor set that is featured in Halo 2 Anniversary, which is loosely similar to the Marine armor from Halo Wars. That armor will be worn by, of course, some UNSC Marines. There will also be some Covenant enemies, elites, and grunts. That's the goal for now, and we'll move on to more enemies later down the line. It will also feature a small quest line to board and defeat the enemies on the ship, clear it out so that you can claim the ship for yourself, and now you can have the Pillar of Autumn as your home ship and some Marines on board, and probably a very basic and simple companion mod with a UNSC Marine or a squad of Marines, depending on how well I can hash that out. But anyway, that's the goal with the Pillar of Autumn mod. Get a legendary Halo ship in your hands. It's a fun ship to fly around in, and it acts as a base of testing for different aspects of the project later down the line on a smaller scale. Enemies, ships, allies, armor, weapons, those sorts of things. Small quests. Moving on from that, I've already touched on the framework and standalone versions of the project, the different mods, and how they will be split into 2 different versions. One which is a plug-and-play style for some vanilla experiences, and a version that removes and replaces vanilla systems or an aspect entirely in order to help create a more cohesive system for all the mods to work together to truly build the Halo world around you. Moving on from that, I get asked a lot about how ships will function in the game. You know, will they be modular? How will I get to upgrade things? And the short answer for that is no / not in the way that you currently do in the vanilla experience with ships. I have started to move towards the direction of not making any of the ships modular and customizable in the way that the base game has it, only because of all of the issues that come with making individual parts and pieces that you put together in the shipbuilding menu. And for what I want to do with the Halo ships and how they function with a more lore-themed and immersive experience, I may end up moving towards a smaller vessel or a civilian vessel that is customizable in the way that the base vanilla ships are, or I may make a very specific ship that is, at least in some parts, modular. But for now, a lot of UNSC frigates, Covenant ships, things of that nature, your larger warships, will not be customizable. This is mainly due to how I'm going to have them set up with custom interior cells, and most of the really large ships, which are most of the Covenant ships and a good few UNSC ships, simply won't be flyable, 1, due to their size, and 2, they will act more like how the UC Vigilance and M-class ships in Starfield behave, where they have a more unique role in ship combat and ship gameplay. However, upgrades will be a aspect of ship gameplay in the project in the form of skills and perks and research, as well as quest rewards. Alternatively to that, there is also a system that I'm looking into about specialized space stations in which you would go to improve certain aspects of your ship. As far as upgrades outside of perks and skills and quests and so on, I'm not too sure at this stage because a lot of the stuff is still extremely early in development, but it will likely be relegated to something along the lines of armor that wears down or temporary upgrades for things like that. And the reason is mostly because in the UNSC, if they wanted a more specialized version of a ship, they would usually just create a different ship. They would field a different kind of ship to fill a role in naval combat and for general purposes of ship manufacturing. And so things like upgrading your ship's armor permanently, or engines, or your health, or aspects like that, I think overall the better decision in the long run is to keep that to something like perks, and for temporary things to be left to specialized space stations, which will be used for refits and repairs, stuff like that. Different ships will have different weapon systems and different stats applied to them, encouraging a more immersive experience and placing limitations on ships so as to accentuate each ship's unique gameplay and role in the world around you. Moving on to the armor and clothing system, it will be reworked so that different armors affect gameplay differently, and it will also have a larger role in the stealth system. Instead of upgrading your armor at a workbench so that all your armor has all these crazy insane stats, you will instead have different pieces of specialized armor that have those stats that you want. So you can't take a light chest plate or a light helmet or something like that and give it super insane armor buffs. And conversely, you can't take like a heavy chest plate and, heavy armor and make it so that you're super stealthy. It's just not the kind of system that I think will help guide your immersive experience. And you'll notice I continue to bring up immersion a lot, mostly because I think that's a really huge key factor, and one area where I think Starfield does a decent job on its own, but also had a lot of potential that myself and probably most people feel was somewhat wasted. And so I'm really leaning into that immersive aspect. Moving on to armor differentiation, different factions and branches of those factions and different units will use different armors. And some armor will be specific to certain characters as well, which isn't anything new in Starfield or in mods. And so I get a lot of questions about what kind of armor the Marines will be wearing, and by and large, most Marines in the UNSC will be wearing the Halo 2 Anniversary style armor. There will be some exceptions to that. Specific groups and branches of the Marines will wear some different armor. For the most part, however, the Halo Reach style or Halo Infinite style Marine armor will not be worn by the Marines. I feel that armor is more appropriate for the UNSC Army, which has taken a huge back burner in the Halo games, but given that a lot of what you'll do will be planet side and in UNSC controlled space, which most of the Halo games don't really showcase this super well, the army will take a huge role, a much bigger role than before, and you'll see a lot of them. So it's not like you're not going to see the Halo Reach and Halo Infinite style marine armor. It's just not going to be worn by the Marines. You'll see it on the army. You know, the Navy will have their own sort of thing, and the Air Force, and of course the Marines and different specialty branches. Of course you've got ODSTs, and even amongst the ODSTs there will be huge armor variations. You know, different Covenant enemies will be wearing different armors, and different units in the Covenant. There will be a lot of variation, and you will see probably the armor that you really like, or find a new armor that you really like. That's also a possibility, as there's a lot of armors that I want to get in this mod and in this project. And for the most part, you'll be able to wear any armor. I mean, obviously, you'll be playing as a human, and so Covenant armor, unfortunately, out of the question. Alright, now, faction replacements. It'll start off as simple vanilla replacers and move on to entirely new factions that will remove the vanilla factions and quests and characters. So it's going to be the UC into the UNSC. The House Varun is going to become the Covenant. The Ecliptic Mercenaries are probably going to be insurrectionists, and the Crimson Raiders will be turned into a Jackal Pirate faction, as those are also pretty prevalent throughout the Halo timeline. And the only reason I haven't turned them into the Banished, which was a very popular request, is because the Banished don't make entrance until very late into the war in the 2540s. But they will be making a debut and will become a faction to deal with much later on. There will be a lot of factions in this game and a lot of animosity between those factions, and it's going to be very messy in a lot of ways that I don't want to spoil. Now, let's move on to new planetary systems and names for those systems. It'll start off with a simple planet name replacer, which I'm currently working on, and eventually I'd like to get new models for some of the newer planets. Further down the line than that, systems will be moved to reflect their in-lore locations as best I can. The galaxy map as you know it right now will probably look very differently when that portion is finished. I briefly touched on the new space station system. The sum is that there will be different types of stations that offer different services and have different uses that affect the galaxy as a whole and your gameplay. There will be refit and repair stations, but not all refit and repair stations will fit every class of ship. If you have a smaller ship, they may fit in one station, but if you have a larger ship, it might not fit in that one, so you have to go to a specialized refit and repair station. And those will repair damage done to the armor of your ship or to its hull. That also reminds me to touch on a other system that I'm looking into reworking, which is shielding. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the UNSC, for most of the Human Covenant War, do not have shields on their ships. That is extremely late war, and only a handful of ships even had them. Again, without spoiling anything, you may be able to change when some of those things happen, if you so choose. However, for the most part, for the starting points and for majority of the war, the UNSC just went full in on upgrading the armor of their ships. And so I will be replacing the shield system with an armor system in the UNSC ships. The reasoning behind how it'll function is that it'll pretty much function the exact same way, but with a few slight differences. Instead of repairing your hull and your ship's health with ship repair kits, what those will do is they will help repair the armor of your ship. They will fill up your shield or armor meter quicker, and so that will be one of the new systems for ships. And some of these stations are places you will have to go to in order to fix your ship health and repair your hull, and to get upgrades for your engines and your armor and things like that. Once you unlock them with perks, the perks won't automatically apply those sorts of things for your ship. It's more so like an unlock, so that once you get the perk, you can go to your refit station and apply those new upgrades to your ship. Alright, so the new outpost system will be split into different types of outposts, with some only being able to be placed at specific locations, like major outposts. These will look more like your classic Halo Wars fire base, or a major UNSC outpost or base, and smaller outposts that'll be more like a simplified version of the Halo Wars 2 outposts and other smaller bases you see in the Halo games and media. A lot of that system is still being drawn up and worked on and fleshed out, but that's the general gist of it. The way that's going to work will be tied to perks. Most everything that has to do with upgrading your experience and affecting the world around you will have to do with the new perk system. The more major outposts will have features and functions that the smaller ones don't, and they will also assist you in more major ways, but they have a cost benefit ratio to each of them. Also looking into doing something with asteroids in relation to this system, but as I've said already, that whole thing is still being kind of fleshed out as we figure out what is and isn't possible. There will be asteroid bases and space stations in asteroids, locations like that, as they are featured in the Halo universe fairly heavily. So, the unique starts and the new character creation system. So the unique starts, right now I have categorized into only 3 basic, fully fleshed out starts, and that is how you begin the game. In relation to the character creation system, it's being divvied into 3 different categories, and those are civilian, operative, or something to do with ONI, and military, anything to do with the broader UNSC. I may add more starts later on as things develop and we get those fully fleshed out. And as time goes on, we may come back and decide, hey, well, we've really worked these out, but we have a bunch of other ideas and we'd like to see how those work out now that the story is more fleshed out. But those will be after the fact things, once at least the first chapter of the story is finished. And the new character creation system, along with those 3 primary categories, which I won't go into too much detail here about the specifics of it, but there's a lot of options right now, and that may change as development proceeds, but I kind of like where it's at right now. The background system, which is being renamed Occupations, will be the primary one where you get to choose between the soldier, agent, and civilian options. And agent is just another name for operative. And then the traits system, I haven't really thought of a new name for that yet, but that's also getting a nice, lovely little overhaul. It'll be the same number of traits, whereas with backgrounds, it's significantly more, at least for now. Still 17 traits, and they're all going to be Halo-themed, and they will function similarly to how traits already exist, where you can choose some traits that will block off access to other traits. And then the one big trait that I see a lot of people probably using is the very last trait at the bottom called Canon. in which only events which happened in lore happen exactly the way that they did, and you cannot affect it or change anything. It's essentially just, I only want the lore playthrough of this, and I don't want any other deviation in events that have happened. So that's basically how the character creation system is going to work, and same with the new perk system. The new perks don't only affect you, they affect the world around you. And so there will be some perks that are you specific, but there will also be perks that affect things to do with the UNSC or the civilian population or ships or lots of logistical output. Moving on from that, timeline for releases. Working on a lot of different things on top of each other at once so that they would all be released in a similar time frame. However, the Pillar of Autumn mod is taking priority right now. But beyond that, we're looking at some early versions of faction replacers that will have to do with ships, enemy ships that you'll see. Planet name replacers, I'm working on that right now. And then there will be several other ship releases. The Spirit of Fire is coming along pretty nicely, or the Phoenix class support ship. After that, the Gladius Heavy Corvette is also in a pretty good state. Lots of other ships are also looking pretty good. I just need to get those cut up and getting interiors for those made and drummed up so that I don't have to use vanilla interiors the whole time. I don't want to give like a hard exact number for timeline stuff, but somewhere in the bounds of a few months, probably. Moving on from timelines for releases, what's the overall story here? What's going on? Well, the timeline is the entire Human and Covenant War, so that's from 2525 to 2552, roughly 27 years. The mod actually begins, the story actually begins just a week before First Contact incident. And so, as I've explained previously, there will be segments of the mod story portions that are all within certain time periods. And so you can run through a 5-year period in X amount of time. You could theoretically speedrun it, but that will also have consequences if you miss out on a lot of the side quests or additional activities, some things that maybe you have to seek out and find that may have a huge impact, or they may not. Will you get to be Master Chief? No. You will not be any named or previously existing character. You're a brand new person, and your character will fill in a sort of unique kind of role. The Forerunner will also be taking a much larger role in the story portion of this mod. While it may not be in as direct a way as you might be thinking, it will still be fairly prominent, and you'll see a lot more Forerunner activity than you might think. I'd also just like to mention, just as a caveat, there will be certain things in here that differ from official current canon based on my and other people who are working on this mod's personal viewpoints on certain things, like the Forerunner dilemma, for instance. And so that will play a role in how we develop the story. However, again, if you don't care for that and you like the current lore and the current canon of the human Forerunner situation, you are more than welcome to play only the canon events and have that be as it is. That being said, my approach to the situation may actually shock you. So if you're at all interested in that, and you're fine with me being a bit of a Bungie lore-leaning fanboy, then check it out for yourself. finishing up the project stuff, concepts that I'm looking into and things that I'd like to test out: space elevators, gravity lifts, enemy vehicles, fighters that are spawned from ships, carriers for smaller craft, lots of things like that, massive ships that take roles in combat but that are not pilotable, which is essentially the new kind of M class in this project, because of course, as you know, large Halo ships get pretty big as compared to the M class in vanilla Starfield, which is only about 200 meters long, the UC Vigilance. However, 200 meters is, I'm pretty sure, even smaller than the Gladius Corvette, which is one of the smallest ships in the UNSC. Or rather, it's one of the smallest warships anyway. So it's definitely going to get interesting, trying to see if it all functions and works properly. Moving on to how we're going to wrap this video up is I'm going to be answering some questions that were given to me by my friends over on the Discord. First 3 questions from Strider7790. Question number 1: is there any progress on weapons and armor? And if so, is there a potential release date? I actually have a couple weapons done that should be ready to put into the game soon. I still need to work on the plasma rifle and the plasma pistol for the Pillar of Autumn demo release. I'm still waiting to hear back from one of the guys I sent weapons out to. So once I hear back from him, I'll update that stuff on my Discord, obviously. But as for a potential release date, I'd like to say hopefully within the next couple of months, but I don't know for sure. So like I said, I will update that on my Discord and maybe make another video when that stuff is finished. Question 2 regarding ships. I know the Pillar of Autumn is not meant to be modular, but would equipment upgrades be possible, like turrets and mat cannons, engines and reactors, etc., for more powerful armaments, or will each ship have set equipment? So you won't be able to change the loadouts of things, like the number of mat cannons or turrets or anything like that. If you want more of a thing, then you'll need to move over to a different ship. However, via the perk system and upgrading at the refit stations, you will be able to increase the power and efficiency and maybe the fire rate of some of those weapons. And the same with engines and armor for the ships and the reactors. Question 3: when would be most likely to see a smaller scale mod with some elements of the Halo franchise, like followers or unique enemies, or just a boss test mod with some equipment from upcoming mods for playtesting and feedback? The only other mod besides the Planet mod and the Pillar of Autumn mod that I'm working on in the creation kit right now adds in new enemy ships. I won't give too much of that away right now. I've shared some teasers on the Discord if you want to go check those out. Links below. I've also gotten requests for some other things to work on, and so once I can get the planet name replacer stuff functioning fine, the first one I'm doing is the Epsilon Iridani system, specifically Iridani 2, also known as Reach. I'll put some locations and buildings, stuff on there, fairly simple stuff. The next question comes from Dutch. Question: drop pod. Yes, Dutch, there will be drop pods. It's another one of these systems I'm looking into, but they exist in Fallout 4, so I don't see any reason why they can't exist here. It's going to be a simple animation system, and dropping the player up from a specific height. Getting that to work from a ship will be a little bit tricky, but it's definitely something I'm looking into. As a fellow massive ODST fan myself, yes, drop pods are definitely high up on the list. And not just allied drop pods either, so make sure to keep checking the skies. The next and final questions come from Alex and Ruvarla. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Alex Andravarla. Alex Andravarla. Please tell me if I'm saying that incorrectly when you watch this. I'm so sorry. Can we have a small sword-based outpost until you get into more massive work like cities, space stations? When will we get some Marines in-game, and can we have a roadmap in the future? Like I said, I will work on getting to a small, simple little base or outpost or something like that just for the time being. Once I finish up with Reach, which is nearly done. I need to add in a couple moons and get those named and set the biomes up and all that correctly, but relatively light work in the doing. It's just that making sure it works when I export the mod. And then I'll get something placed on it, and you can set that up as your base of operations if you'd like. As for when we get Marines in game, when I get the armor back, as soon as I get the armor back and it's looking fine and functions, I will get those set up for the Pillar of Autumn, but before that I'll probably do a simple UC to UNSC replace. I know there's a couple others out there, but I haven't seen the armor that I want to use yet on there, so, and I'll probably get some ODSTs set up for that too, as well as captain's uniforms. As for a roadmap, that's going to be a little bit tougher to deliver because a lot of this stuff is kind of just whenever I can work on it in the massive amounts that I can. We'll see how that goes. But that'll be it for questions and for info. I would like to thank my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me and the project. My first patron, my elite tier, Woeful Raven, thank you so much for supporting this project and myself. And also Strider7790, thank you so much, my only Hunter Patreon tier subscriber and supporter. Huge thank you to both of you guys, and if you would like to support me and the project and what I'm doing here, you can find my links to Patreon below. Not at all required. You'll get a couple extra things, including a huge thank you and shout out every time I do this. Different tiers have different perks. Some of them are server only specific, like on the Discord. However, you will also get some fun little in-game things for your support and subscription. So thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing how you guys enjoy the mods, and I'll probably make another video at some point that won't nearly be this long. I apologize so much for how much this is drawn on, but I'll see y'all out there.